In the last video, we looked at how we can set up this Pyro fire effect on our text. Now let's start to look at how we can animate this on and how we can start to add some detail to our text afterwards so it looks like it's actually been on fire. So I'm going to come back to our font node here. Let's drag this over and give us a little bit more space here. But what we want to do is drop down a ramp mono. I'm going to set this to be a vertical ramp. And we're going to actually multiply this against our text. And if I look here, we can drag this around and you can start to see how we're going to animate this on. So I'm going to take this and let's take this first point. Let's bring this all the way back to the start. And then let's take these 2 points and let's bring those over as well. I'm going to take the first frame here and I'm going to click on each one of these points and keyframe our position. So Alt click on the position to set a keyframe, and then let's move forward about a second. So I'm at 24 frames a second. And I'm going to take these and move these all the way over so that this animates on, and I'm going to keyframe those positions as well. Now I'm going to move forward about another half second, and I'm going to animate on this last one. Now we want to keep about half of our text visible because we're going to distort this as well, and we're going to want this to continue to emit or act as our emission for our actual Pyro sim. So this should be fine here. We can set our keyframe there, and then we're going to just distort this as well. So let's do a distort by slope. And we're going to take this ramp as our source here. And we need a slope direction here. So I'm going to drop down a fractal noise. And we can wire this into our height here. And for this fractal noise, we're going to take our amplitude. Let's actually first just randomize this offset just to give us something different. And then I'm going to mess around with our amplitude maybe a little bit. We're going to take our element size and let's maybe crank this up. Let's actually look at our fractal here. I'm also going to animate this. So we'll click that animation. If I go ahead and press play, you can see that that is going to move pretty quick. So let's take that and we're actually make it a little bit faster. So drop down to maybe like 0.3. And this is going to give us a really kind of chaotic type of emotion that we would see in some fire. Now we also want to take our distort here. Let's take a look at this. And we want to crank this scale up quite a bit. So I'm actually going to over crank this maybe to like maybe 0.25. And I can come to this kernel size as well, and I can increase that, and that just gives us a little bit like higher quality. Now I also want to add in some other shapes to this. So let's drop down a multiply here. Let's drop down a second fractal noise. We're going to wire this into the background for our multiply. And let's come in here and we can preview this. And let's mess around with this as well. Let's offset this. And then we're going to take our amplitude and let's maybe drop this down a little bit. Take our center and we'll set it right around there. Then let's take our element size and let's drop this down as well. Maybe something like something like that. And if we take a look at our distort now, we have this sort of effect going on. And if I go ahead and wire this into our foreground for our multiply here, if I press play, you can see this animating on, and then we have this kind of shimmering, chaotic type of effect going on, which is exactly what we would expect with some fire. So let's wire this into the thickness of our layer to VDB points. And we're also going to want to wire this into our pass-through for our source thickness for the source from layer. If we look at this now, let's jump back to the start. And I can press play here. And we're going to have that animating on. And then we get this kind of fire being added to our simulation here. Now let's come in here and let's come back to this remap and let's maybe crank this up so that we get some more of that kind of white fire here. You get that nice kind of blown out almost type of a look to it. Now let's start to add in some detail to our actual text for our fire. And for that, we're going to need to do a couple of things. We're going to take this fire, we're going to drop down a fractal noise, and we're going to multiply our font against the result of this fractal noise. So let's take a look at this. And in this fractal noise, we really want to just kind of have this sort of like a burn type of effect here. So I'm going to take our amplitude and I'm going to crank this up. And actually, I'm going to look at this. Let's go ahead and offset this one as well, just to something somewhat random here. And let's crank this down maybe a little bit. Let's really let's increase our noise contrast here. Yeah, maybe something like that. We can also animate this as well. So let's come in here, click animate, and we're going to set this. We don't want this to be so quick. So let's drop this pulse length to 100. So that it's really a kind of slow evolving. And that's maybe a little hard to see with that real time, but with it turned off, you can see that it's really kind of slowly, really slowly evolving. And I'm also going to take our roughness and let's increase that as well, just to give this kind of a really noisy type of a look. So now if we look at this on our text, you can see this is what we're getting. And then we want to add some sort of like a cracky kind of effect to this as well. So let's build that out. Let's add a fractal noise here. And we're going to need to come in here and give us some more space. So I'm going to add this fractal noise here. And with this, I'm going to set this to be a really cellular F2, F1. And I'm going to drop our center down maybe quite a bit. I'm going to increase our contrast just a little bit there. Let's go ahead and offset this as well. Something random, doesn't matter too much. And I'm going to bring that roughness all the way down. And then I'm going to take a remap, wire this in here, and I'm going to basically invert this to give us kind of these nice lines here. And then I'm going to take that and I'm going to break them up a little bit. So let's drop down to multiply. We'll wire this into the background, and then let's wire a fractal noise again into our foreground. So for this, let's look at this. We really want to break up these overall shapes. So I'm going to take our amplitude. Let's crank this up. Let's bring this center down. Yeah, quite a bit. Really break these up and then increase our contrast maybe as well. And let's play around with our element size as well. Something like that should work. And then we're going to take this and we're going to do a mono, whoops. We're going to do a mono to RGB. So we have this as our source. And for this, I'm going to take our black body again. And we want to just kind of crank up some contrast in here and really add in, let's find a good spot where we get some of these yellows in here and these reds. So we have this kind of like molten type of a look. Now I'm going to take that and we're going to do a mono to RGB again. But for this one, we're going to just do it off of our text up here. So let's wire in our text here. And for that one, we're also going to use that black body Oops, not black to orange, but black body. And I'm going to get rid of these actually. And let's just kind of bring this over. Let's maybe do this. So we want to have, maybe this is too red. Let's try to find a nice balance here. I don't want it to be too saturated. And we can maybe add a little bit more saturation back here. Something like that. And then we could take these and we're going to just do a quick multiplication back together. So let's take that RGB along with this for our fire. And you can see that we get this sort of an effect here. Now with this, we want to take the result of our animation, which we haven't actually done yet. So we want to take this ramp here. We're going to take this and we're going to come up to an animation editor and let's select our keyframes here. And we're just going to move these over a few frames just to kind of offset this a little bit. So now if we come back to our scene view, you look at this, we have this kind of grow up. And for that, we're going to wire in that multiply against our fire. So let's do a multiply here. So our actual text here, this is going to be kind of like a mask for us. So wire that into the foreground. We look here, have this kind of grow on. So we're going to take that and we are going to use this as the input for our mask here. So if I look here, you can see we get that kind of growing on, and then it kind of fades off here. Let's take this and let's do a, actually, you know what, let's set this to add instead. Yeah, add looks better, not a multiply. Let's do add, and then let's do another add here. Let's add our background, so that, and then let's add in some of this so that it's actually kind of always there. So this is going to animate on, right? So it's just going to disappear, but we want that to kind of stick around. So let's add a bright. Let's add this here, and let's kind of break that up as well. So we can use, where is that noise? There we go. We can use this, the result of this for our mask here. And we're at the end here. We don't want this to be super bright, so let's maybe drop this down, maybe something like that. See what this is looking like. So we have that kind of appear on, which again, it's not going to be fully kind of apparent as to what's going on until we come in here and we're actually going to add this together. So we're going to take our result here. We're going to multiply this. And we're going to add a little bit of a glow to this as well. So I actually want to take this fire, this growth here, and I'm going to take that and I'm going to do a dilate erode. Let's wire this in here to our source. And with this dilate erode, I'm going to increase this radius a lot here. Let's take a look at it. Just to give us something that's like pretty blurred. So let's do like 100. And then I'm just going to blur that even more. So wire that into our source here. And let's go ahead and crank that up. Let's do quite a bit, actually. And then we can do a bright. Let's crank the brightness here. And then we're going to do an add. So we're going to take this bright, we're going to add a constant here. And this is going to be a relatively low constant. So something like 0.01. So we want this to kind of always have an effect, but not a like super large effect. So we're going to take that, we're going to add that, and then we're going to do that against our multiply here. So let's add that for the foreground here. So let's see. So without this, we have just this, and then we've got a little bit of like a sort of like a glow, and let's add another glow actually on top of this. So let's come into this this glow, and we can play around with our glow threshold. Let's come to where there's this kind of bright area. So we can play around with our glow threshold. Let's increase our brightness. Maybe something like that. And then let's take our threshold. Let's lower that threshold. Maybe quite a bit here. Maybe something like that maybe. And we can take this size, and I kind of like it basically where we had it actually. I think that's maybe a little bit too much. But once we take this, we can take a look at our fire here. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at what this is giving us. So we get this kind of like a glow going on. And that may be even too much, but let's see what happens when we add in our actual fire. So we're going to do a blend with our fire here. And this is where it's going to start to simulate together. So we don't actually want to blend. Let's do, I think add maybe too much. Or multiply is not going to be good. Let's do a screen. And let's do a wrap image output. And we can wire in the result of this into our wrap image output. And let's come to this and let's do a quick flipbook. Let's not do the whole frame range. Let's delete this and let's set this to maybe 120. And let's render to mplay, and we can see what this is going to look like with a little bit better quality here, without having to wait for it with the caching and everything. So it's going to go through and it's going to cache out all of those, the simulation for the fire, and we can start to see kind of what we're getting here. So if I come back here and press play, you can see we get this kind of a fire effect. Now the fire is a little bit low quality. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to up the quality here, and we can see what we're going to get for this sort of final evolution here. So here our final animation is rendered out. So let's go ahead and take a look at what this looks like. So we have this nice kind of fire effect animated on here, where we have this flame that's kind of growing across our flame. We have this little pyro reveal with our text being revealed here. And this is with the increased resolution. So I bumped up the resolution of our pyro simulation in here. So if I come back to our pyro configure, I've just cranked that up to 600, and this gives us a lot higher quality in our flames compared to that like 200. So if I go ahead and press play, take a look at it one more time, you can see we've got this nice fire kind of growth effect that's going on, or just kind of ignites and then reveals our text. Give us this nice little effect. Looks a lot better than something like After Effects, where you have to kind of fake this. This is obviously an actual simulation, so you can get some pretty nice things and dial this in to exactly what you're looking for your effect, whatever you're looking to do. Anyways, hopefully this has helped you out. Thank you guys for watching and have a good day.